Hello and welcome to another episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. On today we have the second place locals list from Ollie. How are you doing, Ollie?
I'm doing very good, thank you, buddy. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So what we have in front of us here is a 60 card pile. I'm gonna have to ask, was it inspired by Ben Gregson?
Well, Ben Gregson actually helped me build this deck. I gave the idea to him and he tweaked a couple of things, and this is the final product bar like one card. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. So pile is always an interesting mix of engines. And today we have the Buster Blader engine, the Dogmatika engine, the Eldlich engine, Red Eyes engine, just some solid traps and some hand traps. Why did you pick each of these engines?
So the Buster Blader engine in particular, I feel like is probably the best engine to combat the best deck of the format, which for me is Dragon Link. The Dragoon package, not only is it really good on its own, but it synergizes pretty well with the Buster Blader engine. Like something simple as sending Wyvern to graveyard with Insight, and then you've got a dragon set up for prologue. Dogmatika engine, essentially the same thing when you send Titaniclad to graveyard. And just as well, it's very good for going second as well by sending the entity Untis to graveyard to pop stuff. Eldlich engine, a lot of people, especially at my locals, really underestimate the Eldlich engine. I feel like because this deck, the aim isn't to win turn one. This is a control deck, so I wanted to play something that would be really good for the grind game, and I feel like the Eldlich engine is perfect for that.
Okay. Right, so that's the main engines covered. Then tech choices. So I think the traps are pretty standard, right? Prison and Dino are like just the most solid normal traps you can play.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying to me to play free Ice Dragon's Prison and put something else in for the Dynamiscus, but I'm only using them as trap trick targets. Like if I draw one, then it's fine. It's not the end of the world. But like having trap trick to set them just makes it so much easier for me. And just playing trap trick in general, like it gives me that diversity where like, if I draw into Ice Dragon's Prison, I can use it then to set a prologue, or vice versa. If I've got a prologue already, I can use the trap trick to set an Ice Dragon's Prison. The only techs which I really have are the Sanctums and the Dimensional Barriers. So I've always been a fan of the Artifact package, and Dimensional Barrier I feel like is really underrated this format. I mean, if you look at some of the top decks we have in the game, so if you look at Invoked Shadows, if you look at Prank Kids, Zodiac variants, like all of them lose to a very well timed D barrier. You declare XCs on a Zodiac player, like what are they gonna do? And as far as I'm aware, not many of those kind of decks that I mentioned play stuff that can actually counter a D barrier. Like they won't be playing things like Judgment to negate it or something like that. So 9 times out of 10, my D barrier is going to be resolving, and if it's against the right deck, then my opponent's not going to be playing. As for the Sanctums, though, it was actually a really silly idea that I originally had, and then I spoke to a couple of my friends about it, and they were like, actually, that's pretty decent. So going up against Invoked, I decided Lanciers anyway. So I figured, well, if I make it, if I'm going up against Invoked or anything that requires banishing, I'll just make it Lancier Turbo. So that's what the Sanctums are for. And also the Cypher's there as well, like, my way of viewing my thought process was, I've got Scythe there to lock them out of extract plays, but if I've got a Lancier as well, then I can also use that. So it's a lot of diversity with the Sanctum.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're on to the side deck now. So all that you've got left is the Nibiru, which is, I mean, you're in the UK. A lot of people overextend.
A lot of people, yes.
So this is always good.
Yeah.
Cyclone. This is your. I mean, I guess you can banish stuff with Dynamiscus anyway, right? So you've got a fair amount of removal for spells and traps. You got the Golden Lord. You can send it into with your punishment and stuff.
I want to keep it, but I don't want to. I'm possibly thinking about putting in a playset of Forbidden Droplets in there.
Yeah.
Just if in case if I go up against anything that also plays Dragoon like myself. Just so I've got an out to it. I don't like playing things like Dark Ruler no more. Like, although some people will say it's better than Forbidden Droplets, some people will say Droplets better, but the things with Dark Ruler is that I'm not trying to win turn one, and I feel like Dark Ruler is a card that people play if they're looking to win turn one. I'm the kind of person where I like to play a long game, and I like to make sure that like my opponent does as little as possible whilst I'm establishing as much advantage as possible. And I feel like Dark Ruler it kind of conflicts with what I want to do, whereas Droplets here can allow me to set up further plays, like by sending a dragon to graveyard, for example, which makes my prologue live, you know. So Cyclone, like I've got a lot of removal as it is already, so I may take out the Cyclones.
That concept ties into your choice of Mystic Mine then as well, right? Because it's another card where you can play it against a combo decks to make the game last longer, and you assemble more advantage whilst they're stuck on exactly the same board.
Oh, exactly. Like you say, like Mystic Mine, it ties into that same philosophy of like trying to control what I do, what my opponent does, and like whilst I'm establishing my own advantage. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So that's side deck covered. Extra deck, is there anything unusual? I mean, so you've got the Rafflesia and the Untus as good targets for either Punishment or Servant, but I think really in like a Red Eyes deck you probably play them both anyway, right?
Yeah, so I don't want to sound like a YuGiOh hipster when I say this, but I was one of the first people to be using Rafflesia as a like either a Nadir target or a punishment target. I know that Triff was hyping it up kind of recently on his channel, but yeah, it's just a really, really good target to get your Red Eyes fusion. Yeah, and it's the only other thing in my extra deck which I think a lot of people would be looking at and thinking, why is that there? Is probably the Dingirsu.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple actually. I was talking to Ben about it, and he actually brought it up and said, like, you know, oh, you do realise that Buster Dragon and the Buster Fusion are level 8, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the problems which I was having was trying to make the most out of my Buster Dragon before it got sent to the graveyard by Prologue's effects.
Yeah.
So we looked into the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, but that's very situational if I've got another Buster Whelp in hand in order to be able to go into level 9 Synchro. So we were thinking of other things, and Dingirsu came up, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, actually, Dingirsu is really good as a way of outing like problematic cards like Dragoon. So I thought, why not? Like, let's play that and see how it goes. And it actually came up quite a few times. It's a really, really great card.
Well, it's always good to have more Orcust in the deck.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Cool. Everything else here, as you say, looks like it's necessary or part of an engine anyway.
I think the only thing which I really would want to take out is the Nightmare Unicorn and put in the Blacklist Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, Link 3.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of times where I was thinking, oh, I could really use a BLS right now, just as more of a board presence and to out more problematic cards. Other than that, though, in my opinion, and I don't want to sound big-headed when I say it, in my opinion, I think the deck's perfect. I genuinely do. I absolutely love this deck.
Sure. Okay. In terms of the siding strategy, what would you normally take out? Is it just the hand traps for the side deck stuff?
Most of the time it would be the hand traps. I would probably take out something like Ash Blossom. Depending on the matchup, I think I took out Phantasmate once throughout the whole tournament, and that was round 2 against a Flower Guardian player. The Dynamiscus and the IDPs, again, depending on the matchup, I'd take them out for the D-Barriers and Sanctums, or Sanctums/Lanciers. I've got the 4 trap trick targets, so I'd take them out and I'd put in the new trap trick targets, or I'd take out like certain number of hand traps, put in new hand traps, etc., etc. So
you're just replacing like for like every time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. The one thing which I say to people is that you're not trying to win turn one, so make sure you don't play like you're trying to win turn one. Like it's a long game which you're playing with your opponents. In a way, if you're going up against certain people, because a lot of people will try to win their games turn one, and if you put them in a position where you're grinding them out and you're playing a long game, it can frustrate the opponent, and it may cause them to misplay.
But you mentioned obviously, the Dragoon. No, sorry, the Buster package makes the Dragon Link matchup really, really good. Is there anything in here that makes the Prankids matchup or the Shadol matchup any better?
So the Prankids matchup, definitely the D barriers inside and the sanctums for that matter as well. I guess the one-off Call by the Grave as well. I guess, which a lot of people have been saying, like, why are you playing one Call by the Grave? But yeah, you declare fusion with D barrier, they're going to have a really hard time. You could also the Ash Blossoms as well. For when they go normal summon their first Prankids monster, link it away and try to use the effect. Nibiru inside is pretty decent for that matchup as well. As for Invoked, pretty much the same thing. With the D barriers and sanctums.
Yeah. Ashes sometimes get there unless they draw Invocation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Droll as well, especially against Invoked. Droll against that deck just kills them. Like I said, unless they draw the Invocation, which they always do apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Any shout outs you want to make?
Oh, where do I begin? So first of all, shout outs to CGC in Chichester, which is my locals. Shout outs to Ethan Her, who won the tournament at Chichester. Shout outs to Ben Gregson as well for helping me build this deck. And finally, shout outs to my boy Daniel Keeling for being an absolute re. And that's it. Yeah, that's it for shout outs.
Cool. Thanks very much for coming on and for sharing your list and all your insights into how the deck actually operates. Hopefully this will help anyone watching pick it up and get going with it.
Thank you very much for having me, Joe.